radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
In a moment, headliners. First, the latest news headlines. In her first television interview following a series of recent political missteps, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has been apologising for her mistakes. In just 6 weeks, the Prime Minister's economic policies have caused the British pound to plunge, emergency central bank intervention, U-turns and the firing of her Chancellor. Despite that, she says she's determined to deliver on the 2019 Tory manifesto.
Prime Minister, you have no direct mandate from the electorate and no political leaders come back from the kind of poll ratings that you're currently enduring. What makes you want to go on?
What I'm focused on is delivering for the British public. Now, I recognise we have made mistakes. I'm sorry for those mistakes, but I've fixed the mistakes. I've appointed a new Chancellor. We have restored economic stability and fiscal discipline. And what I now want to do is go on and deliver for the public. We were elected on the 2019 manifesto. I'm determined to deliver on that. Levelling up, securing investment into all parts of our country, getting roads built, getting opportunities right across the nation. And that's what I'm thinking about and that's what I'm focused on.
Your colleague Charles Walker has said you've got a maximum of 2 weeks before you're removed from office. What would be your message to him and others on your own benches who are saying things like that?
My message is we should be focusing on delivering for the British public. We are in difficult economic times, we're in difficult international times with the war being perpetrated in Ukraine. And now is the time to focus on delivering, making sure that we are delivering on our energy package. So before we stepped in, people were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We've now put in place the energy price guarantee. We've reversed the national insurance increase. And that's what I'm thinking about as Prime Minister.
Well, that was Liz Truss in her first television interview since today's furore in the Commons, where the Chancellor warned MPs about the decisions of eye-watering difficulty, he said, that were ahead. Jeremy Hunt has abandoned most of Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget plan set out 3 weeks ago. Now he says the plans to cap the cost of energy for 2 years will end in April, with more targeted support for households. Also scrapped the planned 1 pence to the basic income tax rate, which will stay now at 20 pence. And the pound of financial markets did rally after his announcements. Well, more analysis on that tomorrow for you on GB News. Just lastly for me now, the Queen Consort and her sister are having a night out together at the Booker Prize Awards ceremony. Camilla arriving at the Roundhouse in London with Annabel Elliott. Tonight's winner of the Booker Prize was the Sri Lankan novel The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. Congratulations to them. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, when now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle. We're going to be taking you through tomorrow's newspapers. Joining me, I have two fabulous comedians, the sultry and brooding Josh Howie and also Nick Dixon, otherwise known as the Big Dog, to give him his due. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. We're going to start with the Daily Telegraph, and they lead with, "We must take decisions of eye-watering difficulty." That sounds painful. This is going to be a theme, of course, on the front covers. We go to the Independent. "Pensions at risk at Hunt's search for more savings." Tuesday's Guardian. "Hunt rips up PM's plan in astounding U-turn on tax." And, of course, we will be covering all of this momentarily. Financial Times runs with "Truss's future on knife edge after Hunt rips up her economic strategy." And "Prepare for blackouts during deepest, darkest evenings," warns Power Chief. All very foreboding at the moment. The Mirror is running with "Mini-budget meltdown, humiliated." And there is a picture of the humiliated Liz Truss next to an almost gloating Jeremy Hunt. We're going to move on now to the front cover of The Express. They have "Truss, I'm sorry, we went too far and too fast." And The Sun has "Sorry Liz sits silent as Hunt rips up budget, the ghost PM." Tuesday's Metro, very dramatic headline, "The Axeman cometh." And The Star has lettuce Liz on leaf support. Now, this will make no sense to you, but the Daily Star has been running a campaign to see whether the lettuce they bought from Tesco for 60p is going to outlast Liz Truss. That's what that's about there. And those were your front covers. So we're going to kick off with Tuesday's Telegraph, and of course it looks like the country has a new leader, and it's no longer Liz Truss.
Yes, Jeremy Hunt, now de facto Prime Minister, says senior Tory, which is Sir Roger Gale, but Wikipedia are also saying it. I went to Wikipedia and they'd already corrected it to Jeremy Hunt is now the de facto Prime Minister. So this seems to have happened. And I like to call him the Right Honourable Member for Beijing. I've coined that because he loves China. But this is who we've got now. And, of course, he's reversed almost all of the mini-budget. So Liz Truss finds herself in the impossible position of having a Chancellor who's against her Chancellor in just about every way. Now they say de facto running the country. And people have even messaged senior journalists like Christopher Hope at The Telegraph saying things like Rishi PM, Hunt Chancellor, Penny Foreign Secretary. They're trying to do a sort of coup. But don't worry, Penny Mordaunt has assured us it's not a coup. So right, that's when you know it probably is a coup.
Well, if the people at the heart of the potential coup are saying it's not a coup, they're just being smart, aren't they? I think that's what's going on there. Josh, can I ask you about this? I mean, surely, given that Liz Truss campaigned for the leadership on the basis of tax cuts to stimulate economic growth, and the person that she's now appointed as Chancellor opposes all of that, and not just opposes it, but has actually sliced up all of the...
Particularly good for her, although I'd say this article is more of a placeholder article before we... now power, which Number 11 has always had a lot of power. That's why Gordon Brown took the job many years ago.
Well, it does have power, but they're surely answerable to the PM. But not in this case. I mean, it feels very much like, as the article points out, he's taken the job on his terms. He's basically said, look, I will take this job, but I have to be able to do whatever I want. Because there's no way
we don't know what happened.
No, but it does feel
But
like
I think she's basically said, do what it takes to fix it, and this is what it takes to fix it.
Is this what it takes to fix it, Nick?
Well, that's to be seen, depending on if it stabilises the markets or not. It's being characterised as like Truss has this, terrible Thatcherite, chaotic, kamikaze budget, and now it's going the other way. But it's not quite that clear because actually they've changed the energy price cap and made it so it possibly be worse for poor people because actually Truss had a 2-year plan for that, and now Hunt's changed it to it's going to be reviewed in April. We can get into all that later, into the details. The part that really bothers me is just the cavalier treatment of the members. I mean, we have this thing about they're trying to put Rishi back in, and we have people like William Hague saying they shouldn't go to the members, Tobias Ellwood agreeing. I even saw an anonymous Tory source in the paper say we should only go to the members when we're in opposition and it doesn't really matter.
But don't you think that's really to do with the fact that the country's not going to stand another protracted leadership campaign?
I mean, I totally agree with you. They shouldn't go to the members. They should go to...
Keir Starmer.
Which would be
a general
they should go to the public.
I'm saying they should go to the members just for the record.
You think they should go to the members?
Yeah, they should go to the members, but all the politicians are saying they shouldn't anymore.
I think they should go to the members of this country.
But imagine bringing back Rishi Sunak. I mean, he's been specifically rejected by the members.
I know. Well, I think Josh's idea of calling a general election, let's face it, that's not going to happen. Look at the way that the polls are, it's absolutely not.
It started with getting rid of Boris. There's no way to patch up. Once you get rid of Boris, which was essentially a coup, no one quite... Yes, there was a Partygate, but that was the mistake.
Yeah, who cares about those things, breaking the law?
As Nadine Dorries pointed out quite fairly, they were 5 points behind at that time. Now they're facing total wipeout. Has it been an improvement? It's been a complete disaster.
Are either of you troubled by this idea that the markets seem to dominate absolutely everything? All of this is about reassuring the markets, right?
Yeah,
does that trouble you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, the blob it's the blob against Truss, isn't it? I do accept the criticism that they didn't lay out the budget clearly enough. It wasn't scrutinised properly. It wasn't planned properly.
Yes.
Because if you actually look at what they did, it's not that radical when you really break it down, but they failed to explain it properly.
Well, we're going to go to the front page of The Sun now. Truss is sorry, apparently, Josh. She's just given this interview this evening, saying that she's sorry. What do you make of that?
Well, I think good for her apologising. At the same time, what's she sorry for? Well, she's probably cost, at the moment, our country about £20 billion to hold up the gilt market.
I mean, she looks guilty in that photograph, doesn't she?
Yeah,
she looks very upset.
She...
I feel a bit sorry for her on a human level, I have to say, because I mean, she had to sack her best mate the other day, and now she's the one who's in the firing line. And, you know, if she goes down in history as the third female PM, which is quite an achievement, but not if she was only there for like 3 minutes. Exactly. I just feel a bit bad for her. It's a difficult job, eh?
Yeah.
It is a difficult job, and it seems like she's just not built for it.
Yeah.
I do feel sympathy because, much like with Boris, I started out thinking, well, they've done something wrong. Then the media are so awful that I end up sympathising with Truss or Boris because the media is so much worse. I mean, Peston said, are you going to apologise to your own party? Is he the de facto Prime Minister now?
Yeah.
And we saw Truss sitting there. That's because of the urgent question protocol. She wasn't allowed to answer. Once she nominated Penny Mordaunt, she couldn't answer, so she just sat there looking awkward. I did feel sorry for her.
Is it not the issue that they're going to have to get rid of her sooner or later? I mean, some people within her own party are saying, what, you've got 2 weeks left, effectively. You're on life support.
The way that these things build through the narrative and then it gets reinforced by the media and goes back to the MPs.
Yeah.
And she says here, I'm not focused on internal debates within the Conservative Party. Yes, you are. and then she says, what I'm worried about is delivering for the people of Britain, but what I'm worried about is what she's going to deliver next. Because she's already...
Well, isn't that the issue, though? Like, in terms of what happens next is going to be the big concern that lots of people have. And some people will be wanting to keep her in place for as long as possible, because what on earth comes next after this?
Well, I'm concerned about what she's already delivered, because what we're really not going to see is the whole interest rates going up more than they were, and we're going to see the impact that has on people paying their mortgages. And that's what's going to be happening. Okay. That's a direct result of her actions over the last...
So who comes next? Is Boris coming back?
Well, that's one option. It's all academic anyway, because they're going to get obliterated in the next election, which we'll get to. And that's the big question, is how can they actually survive as a party? I thought our own party didn't do them any favours today when Penny Mordaunt was asked a question by Stella Creasy, is the PM hiding under a desk? Mordaunt repeated, she's not under a desk. It's like, don't repeat the insult. And then everyone laughed for about a minute. And people were saying, did Mordaunt do that on purpose? It's worth asking the question, because she didn't help, let's say.
Let's just say she's under the desk.
Well, on that theme, we're going to Tuesday's Daily Mail now, and the Tory party could be heading to extinction if the current polls are to be believed, Josh. I mean, this is quite an alarming poll, this one.
This is an alarming poll, and I say this as a Labour supporter.
Yes.
Because you need a strong, healthy opposition.
Well, they're suggesting
a proper democracy.
The SNP.
And the SNP would be even worse than the Tories. So at the current polling, they would the Liz Truss's current party would be left with 48 seats, whereas the SNP would get 52 of the 59 seats. And look, the plus side of this is that at least it's going to stop people going on about Labour going into coalition with the SNP.
Yeah.
At least we can finally shelve that particular part of the conversation.
But I don't know if I believe that poll. That seems highly unlikely to me. I would have thought. I mean, come on. The idea that the SNP would be the official opposition. I mean, if you know, I'm more likely that we would get. I think the Labour would do a bit better than that, and maybe we'd get a hung parliament.
Well, yeah, the question is, can they win without Scotland? Tony Blair, I think, had such a big landslide, he won without Scotland. But even if you had some sort of coalition with the SNP, that's bad, but it doesn't necessarily mean proportional representation, which is another question. So the question is, what's going to happen to the Tory party? Will they be destroyed? What replaces them? And will PR come in? Because Farage is banking on PR coming in, then he comes back with whatever his new party is and wins.
If it is a hung parliament and Labour has to go into coalition with the Lib Dems, PR will probably be part of that.
Well, that's the
deal,
question.
Right?
Now, Farage is banking on that. Now, the question now, some people on our side, like Calvin Robinson, or I'm saying our side, GB News people, have said we should have PR, but then people like Peter Hitchens said, no, we don't want PR. What we want is to destroy the Tory party. Others say, well, hang on, all these little parties like Reclaim haven't done well. But the argument is, no, the Tory party has to be destroyed first. And then the question is, what would come next? If this happens, I'm not saying it will.
You really want to destroy the Tory party?
Well, the thing is, I do, but the question is, what would come next? Because my side of things would say we want an actual Conservative party, right? But now the question is, would the majority of the public actually vote for that? And that's where you enter into Dominic Cummings' kind of vote leave start-up party, which is a sort of mixture. It's very pro-NHS, but it's anti-mass immigration. So what kind of party would it be?
Tell me this, Josh. Why are people so afraid of the idea of proportional representation? You know, there are plenty of countries across Europe where coalition governments do incredibly well, and this is.
I just wonder if we have got used to this kind of polarised politics now. Because for it to work, you need compromise.
Yeah, sure.
And that's something that we don't seem to have.
But that might be a step in the right direction.
Well, if it could actually be applied. But I just wonder if we have the political maturity for that, because there's so many of these issues that cross over.
But I wonder whether the political tribalism has been exacerbating the political immaturity, and maybe we need something. We need something.
The argument against it is Italy. You have 19 parliamentary parties. You finally get an elected leader after 14 years. If you think we have chaos, think about Italy. Meloni is the first properly elected leader in 14 because of their bizarre system, which is just a series of bargains, and no one's properly elected.
And I will say that Labour, believe it or not, aren't fragmenting. They've dealt with their nutters, arguably.
I mean, there's still quite a division within the Labour Party.
There's a few, but they have dealt extensively and also stopping their nutters.
Did you not see the conflict between Owen Jones and Jess Phillips, that little interview at the Labour Party?
The Owen Jones, but she is a member of... and he is not. So.
They've dealt with their nuttier nutters. There's different grades of nutter.
But she's an MP. But what's been happening for people who follow what's going on online is, as the Labour are organising who's going to be standing in the next elections, they have been blocking the more nutty nutters from it.
But they do. There's a lot of talk about the left wing of the party and the right wing of the party.
And they've been looking into people's their social media pass, and seeing them liking various anti-Semitic tweets, and they're actually stopping those people voting. I mean, being part of the next election.
Final word on this from Nick.
Just to say, the point of this story, though, is that the Conservative Party don't represent most people anymore. That's why we do need change.
OK, well, it's very interesting. That poll is genuinely quite surprising and shocking. Tuesday's Guardian now, back to the budget. Is there anything there hasn't been a U-turn on? I mean, this is...
Very little. So, yeah, they've gone with no U-turn from Jeremy Hunt on scrapping bankers' bonus cap. Now, this is something they didn't change, and, of course, it's being framed by The Guardian as, like, evil. But actually, even the Bank of England were against it, because the concern was that all it leads to is higher fixed salary costs rather than...
So why retain this? Why retain this one element?
No, because he's saying it didn't work. He's saying the opposite of that. I'm not explaining it very well, but they've kept... They want to change... The thing Hunt's done is not what you said, it's the opposite. They haven't kept the bad policy.
OK.
They're trying to keep a policy that... They're trying to not change a policy that doesn't work. Anyway, it's complicated. Basically, the actual U-turns is on almost everything, but the policies weren't that radical. As I said, Labour actually backed the income tax going down from 20p to 19p, which is now being scrapped. They backed the national insurance change, which is now being scrapped. They were against the corporation tax going from 19% to 25%. So he scrapped almost everything.
Clarify this to me, though, because Hunt is saying he wants to scrap the cap on bankers' bonuses. That, I believe, was Liz Truss's position, wasn't it?
That's why there's no U-turn.
Daily Mail, interestingly, is saying that he wasn't going to do that. Now, this is saying that he is backing that.
Right,
that scrap.
But that was the policy that was proving to be the most problematic.
One of the policies.
No, it's the 45p tax rate.
No, but what I mean, from a publicity perspective, it doesn't look good in a cost of living crisis.
Because even the bankers don't want it.
Right.
That's the interesting thing, because the idea of it is it came in after 2008 because it was making a volatile market where you just had people, the bankers, were just going for those short-term profits, and they didn't care about the long-term thing.
Right.
Now they fix people's salaries, so they're basing their salaries on their performance over a period of time. time.
Right.
The idea is that is to keep things more stable and stop the more cowboy element.
So then who wants to scrap this?
Well, the government wants it because they're saying, oh, well, then people will pay more tax if they have bigger bonuses.
That's the logic.
That's the logic, of course.
Right.
But, of course, are those people going to pay tax?
But if the bankers themselves
Well, the bankers themselves are saying they actually want to maintain it because they like that stability, and also they're very much aware of how it plays out publicity-wise for them.
But that's the point, isn't it? Yeah. And that's why it does seem strange to me. If you're going to completely rip up the economic strategy of the government but sustain the one element
of course.
that was the obvious PR coup to the opposition, that doesn't make sense to me.
And already Labour, of course, are going in on that particular policy. And
well,
saying,
of course they would, inevitably. That's, of course, what's going to happen. Anyway, Tuesday's Independent, and this is some sort of bad April Fool's joke by the government, Josh.
Well, you know what? This is strange because I'm probably getting in trouble for this, but this is something I agree with, actually.
What is it?
Well, what it is, sorry, I should explain. The energy bill support could be cut after April 2023. So at the moment, there's a policy of that support being there for 2 years. Now, it's not that it's necessarily going to be cut, but it's just that they're going to re-look at it in 6 months' time.
Right, OK.
Because this is there's about a 70 billion deficit, a big black hole in the plans this accounts for about 40 billion of it.
Yes.
So we don't know in 6 months' time what the prices are going to be in terms of for energy. So maybe they will have gone down, maybe not. The other thing they're doing, this is to across the board. Whereas what he's now talking about, Jeremy Hunt, is let's make a more targeted cuts for the people who need it the most. Now, if that actually happens, that's the most important thing.
But will that... I mean, you're talking about a saving of £40 billion to the Treasury, but if you're saying that these caps are going to be scrapped, then the poorest people aren't going to...
No,
they won't be able to afford.
But what I'm saying, the idea is that they're just going to put these caps in place for 2 years.
Yes.
Across the board we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time or whatever. The point is, let's have a look at what's happening, keep it for the next 6 months, and then revisit it. Now, if he does revisit it and they do a more targeted approach and they actually help the people who need it the most, I would say, I could see, we have to come up with some savings. Just spending 40 billion like that, it's going to be tough for a lot of people, but giving those cuts to people who don't need it, that seems wrong to me.
Do you think Josh has a point?
He has a point, but the irony of it is that Truss is being attacked, as I said, for these evil, helping the rich, Thatcherite, right-wing budget. But actually, this policy was, and Truss failed to communicate it properly. This was actually a big state helping out poor people all of us really, with the cost of living, and I probably include myself. She was helping everyone for 2 years to pay their energy bills. And what's funny is she was attacked anyway. Now it's being reversed, and they're being attacked again. But she really failed to get that across.
You can't win, can you?
No, of course, you definitely can't win. But she failed to get that across in a way. And I agree with Josh that going back to it in April for a more means-tested approach, when and he's saying when we don't have unlimited. We don't want to be exposed to volatility in gas prices with the war and everything. So I understand the logic, but it's just funny that it's a kind of the Truss is still getting, the government's still getting attacked either way, and they actually had this very lefty kind of policy that's now being reversed.
She was saying your bills are not going to be excessively high. We're going to cap them, and it'll be fine. But what you're saying, Josh, is that that only really makes sense if you're doing it on a means-tested basis anyway. Because some people can
certainly
afford
long-term in terms of just saying it's for 2 years is an arbitrary number. I don't necessarily think and I want to be very clear here. As long as he does go back in 6 months and actually make those cuts for the people.
It's interesting that you trust him so much.
Well, and it's not that I do trust him. I'm just saying that just throwing that money and not knowing where it's going to go in 2 years' time, and that's part of the volatility of the market, knowing that there's a £40 billion going into this.
Well, we're on to Tuesday's Telegraph now. Even the great internet encyclopedia, Wikipedia, can't keep up with all the government crises, Nick.
Yeah, so Wikipedia adds separate page for Truss government crisis to avoid confusion with Johnson-era crisis, I suppose. So Wikipedia having a bit of fun here. They've got sort of two separate pages on which Tory crisis we're talking about. So it has reached kind of comical dimensions. And it does show the self-destructive mode the Tories have been in. And it was all fairly unnecessary, like I say, if they'd have just kept Boris. But Wikipedia, of course, can't really be trusted. In this case, it's probably pretty factual. But in general, anyone vaguely right-wing, the first paragraph will be far-right, evil Nazi.
Yeah,
I mean, I've checked your Wikipedia, it has your birthplace wrong. Mine thinks I'm a Scottish journalist who's 51 years old, so mine's completely off.
I mean, This is a strange story, isn't it? I mean, who just checked Wikipedia and thought, oh, well, let's write about this in the midst of this?
Well, like I said
That's probably
before,
what they're doing. That's what journalists...
It shows you what their source is, right?
Yeah, exactly, and just went on it and went, oh, this is interesting, all right, that's a few hundred words, done, job done.
It took no time at all for Jeremy Hunt to be called Chancellor and de facto PM, which is, of course, some wag at Wikipedia.
You kind of feel like the narrative is spinning out of control. But, I mean, I guess it makes sense on Wikipedia. You know, if you're just going to put a subheading that says Tory political crisis 2022, where do you start? You know, is it Partygate? You're talking about the mass resignations with Boris Johnson, now the Truss, now the mini-budget.
We've still got another third to go.
They could still get in some major crises.
We're
going to break the internet.
We've still got another 7 chancellors.
Yeah, exactly. Can't wait for that. Anyway, coming up, we step away from the budget and all the heavy politics, and we're going to be discussing Kanye West's new ventures, Just Stop Oil's latest stunt, and what Obama thinks of cancel culture. See you in a minute.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's newspapers with me, Andrew Doyle, and helping me through, I've got 2 wonderful comedians, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon, my favourite of the headliners, except for all of the other ones. So the Daily Mail is going to kick us off. Some shocking scenes now from the Chinese consulate. This is in Manchester, Josh.
So this happened a couple of days ago, but the video has just been widely spread now. And also they've showed a picture of what happened. But essentially, a Hong Kong democracy protester was brutally beaten by regime thugs. And this is during a demo outside the Chinese consulate in Manchester.
Just to clarify, that the regime thugs, those are people who work
for things. So, yeah, it's a pretty amazing footage.
There it is, we're seeing it.
Oh, yeah, so basically, if you can sort of see here, one of the protesters, and it's peaceful protest, is pulled inside to the actual grounds and then starts being beaten by people who work for the Chinese embassy. And then the police sort of go in there and sort of lacklusterly pull him back out again. And the photo has been released of the guy, and he's got like a cut under his eye and his nose is
I mean, presumably the UK police are nervous about making an arrest on Chinese territory.
Well, it's not Chinese territory. That's the thing. So it's different from embassies. This is consular. Embassies technically is Chinese territory. But some of the rules are different and they can govern self-govern, but actually it is definitely UK soil. So for them to pull in this person, start beating it, and actually there's another clip of there's some banners out the front, and this person walks in front of him, and you can see him in that video, and he sort of kicks the banners and pushes them down, and it turns out there's people are saying that looks very much like, even though he's hidden by a mask, the actual Consul General himself. And he's the one who's standing there. And there's also a photo of him, like, pulling the guy's hair.
I would say with China, with all of its record of human rights abuses, they might want better PR than this, you know? I wouldn't have thought it's not ideal for them.
Are they that bothered about PR?
No, they're not.
That's something, you know, certainly you might want to ask the Uyghurs about that. Luckily, our Chancellor is the Chinese ambassador, though, so maybe he'll fix it.
It's all OK.
But you've got MPs demanding that the police investigate.
Well, of course,
and
it's a crime.
And bring, and exactly.
It's against the law to beat someone up.
Absolutely. So, and Catherine West, who is my MP, who I'm not a massive fan of, to be honest, in her role in the Corbynite era, but she is the Shadow Minister for Asia and the Pacific, and she says she's going to raise it in Parliament urgently. I totally agree with that,
Good.
And I hope that she gets some answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tuesday's Telegraph now, and Just Stop Oil back in the news again after they'd thrown a tin of tomato soup over Van Gogh the other day. What are they up to now? They're so unpredictable, Nick.
Yeah, Just Stop Oil protesters forced Dartford Crossing to close after scaling bridge. So a couple of them have gone up a bridge. 33-year-old London teacher Marcus and Morgan Trolan, 39-year-old bridge engineer. So it's very strange. We've seen. Did you see that video the other day of the van driver saying, like, do you know, we make your avocados, you know, do you understand how all this works? And he was saying, why are you attacking your own community? And he was trying to get them out of the road. That's what really bothers me about it. He was saying, go to Shell or BP. And there was that one the other day where a baby was stopped from going to hospital. But because they believe so strongly, they're so brainwashed by this ideology, they probably think, yeah, well, we're in it for the greater good. So that's what's so disturbing. I particularly find the older people quite disturbing. You expect young people to be a bit narcissistic and stupid, but you see the older people in this, like this guy who was throwing soup at something the other day, you think, why are you doing this?
Why are they so obsessed with soup? I mean, it's always soup.
Yeah, I know.
Throwing it everywhere.
There's some sort of point about the price of a can of soup or something.
How they contradict themselves. And I don't think that they're so brainwashed by the ideology of climate change. It's just the methods are so ridiculous. So that thing where they're throwing soup, that is to illustrate that countless families in England cannot afford a tin of soup. Well, that doesn't illustrate. All you're doing is wasting more food there, and also that famine is rife across sub-Saharan Africa. So it's like, that's like, pointing out a famine by having a big feast or something.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
by wasting food.
By wasting it.
But also
they contradict themselves.
This thing about, you know, going up this Dartford Bridge and sort of basically...
3:50 in the morning. I kind of respect anybody for getting up that early.
Well, there's commitment, certainly, but there's also just ruining people's day. Like, there's all sorts of people who won't be able to travel as a result of this. I mean, just in terms of peaceful protest, which I'm all for, when you do something that is disrupting other people's lives, it's not good for your own cause. I just don't see how that works.
Absolutely. And the irony is, of course, that this caused massive traffic jam.
Yes.
Pollution. Much more pollution, standing pollution as the people are waiting for at least an extra 60 minutes, plus the detour that going around, people travelling longer.
Yes.
They hurt their own cause, and that is what is so stupid.
Anyway, Tuesday's Times, Kanye West back in the headlines again. He seems to be here every day. Nick, what's going on this time?
Yeah, so Kanye West makes deal with son of Tory peer to buy free speech platform Parrot. That's, of course, George Farmer, Candace Owens' husband, who's CEO. And it is interesting. I mean, we know Kanye, of course, went mad the other day with that bizarre rant about Jewish people, said he was going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jews.
I mean, you call it bizarre, I call it massively racist.
He did leave one or two DEFCONs, because DEFCON 3 is not the most serious, so he reserves the top two for, like, Kim's boyfriend. Yeah. But, yeah, of course it was terrible. I mean, I knew you'd try and attack me and make like I don't care about it. It was terrible. So there's that. And I do think, as terrible as that was, I do think it was questionable, well, not questionable, I think it was terrible as well, when Chase froze his bank account, because I'm against, there's all kinds of people say horrific things all the time, but I'm against their bank accounts being frozen.
There? So his bank account was frozen.
Yeah,
he
by
was kicked
Chase,
off Instagram and...
Yeah, and Twitter. I think he was kicked off Twitter.
So is that why he was
suspended.
He's buying Parler, which is, we should explain, Parler is like a rival to Twitter.
Yeah, and Parler, they've attempted to do Parler before. They ran into some problems when Apple took it off the App Store, because the problem is you've got the servers, which tend to be run by leftists. So...
By the way, it should be said that it has been proven to host neo-Nazi content, Parler.
But there's neo-Nazi content on Twitter.
Yeah, but the idea is I don't think they indulge it as much, shall we say.
There's some pretty grim stuff out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got Putin, you've got the Ayatollah, there's those arguments. Getter's done better. The problem is, of course, with these, that they tend to become echo chambers. That is the problem when you break off from the, having just a standard platform, and you have Parler and you have Twitter. They become so-called echo chambers for the right. And I think Getter's done a bit better, but Parler has definitely run into trouble. Will this change it? I don't know.
I mean, the real problem that you have is if you're going to set up a social media platform that is devoted to free speech, what happens is all of the very worst people gravitate there because they know they can say what they want. And then, of course, those messages are easy to find. Then you can characterise the platform as being far-right or neo-Nazi or whatever on the basis of those individuals. And what you really want is a free speech platform where everyone of all sides of the political spectrum goes there, and then it could potentially work, maybe.
But that's not what's happened here. And it's interesting, this whole thing about JP Morgan, there was like this conspiracy theory. He's like saying that like Jews are out to get him, and you know, but then JP Morgan wasn't created by Jewish people, doesn't have Jewish people running the bank.
Yeah.
You know, it's just this the conspiracy. The funny conspiracy, or not funny, is he was defended by Candace Owens, and famously, she's an American sort of right-wing commentator, conservative commentator, should I say. And then it turns out that she's the one who's married to this guy who's putting this deal through to buy...
Well, she's married to George Farmer, who
exactly. So
owns Father.
I wouldn't call it a conspiracy, but certainly there's self-interest there in her defence of...
That's just basic networking, isn't it? And who do you know?
Well, I know, but I'm
friends,
just saying she came out to defend his racism, and then turns out that her husband's in a business deal. It's like, oh, well, that's great, thanks. Thanks for throwing Jews to the wolves there.
Tuesday's Metro now, and giving us a story about hate speech.
This article is very confusing. The headline is, young LGBTQI+ people twice as likely to experience hate online.
I didn't understand this article when I read it.
No, not at all. When you read it, it makes no sense, because what they do is they're constantly skipping... This is a study by Norton, who are like one of the internet providers.
Yes.
Essentially looking into youth involvement within the internet.
Yeah.
And they, from that, have sort of plucked this one statistic about LGBTQI plus people, which is that they're nearly twice as likely to experience hate speech compared to those who identify as heterosexual. Now, if that statistic in itself is slightly weird, because you're going, well, you would think you would be twice as likely to experience homophobia. If you just said, like, homophobic thing than something straight, then that makes sense. But the real thing is that then they just keep on putting these sort of statistics next to each other and not quantifying exactly who they're about. So really, a lot of these statistics are about how they go like 2/3 of young people have experienced bullying and harassment online or viewed distressing content. But that's next to another statistic about LGBTQI people. So you don't know who on earth they're talking to all the way through the article.
I'm really confused with this, because it says... So here it says that the members of the LGBTQI+ community were nearly twice as likely, 52%, to experience hate speech online compared to those who identify as heterosexual, just 26%. What does it mean to experience hate speech online? Because is that something that you've found, or something you've gone out... Or is that something that's been addressed to you? This really isn't clear.
Not at all.
Because I could experience hate speech, I just Google it, and then I've experienced hate speech.
And we could just hang out a little bit. But,
right, well, exactly.
But yeah, it's incredibly annoying and frustrating, and a really bad thing. And also it just hurts your eyes, because all the way through they keep on referring to LGBTQI+. So you can see how woke a newspaper is by how many but also because digits they have at the end of
there's a lot of straight people identifying as the Q now. So
yes,
that's probably mostly straight people.
This is what mixes it all up and makes it totally unreadable.
Nick, you're a great defender of the LGBTQI+ community. What do you think of this?
Yeah, well, like you say, it's subjective. I mean, what does hate mean? And then it says here, the feeling that being online had a negative impact on them was higher among LGBTQI+ people, as well as those with mental health conditions. So it's an incredibly subjective feeling around your mental health. Probably the people that get attacked most online in reality are footballers and right-wing politicians.
I mean, I've seen a lot of homophobia online recently, and more than I've ever seen in the past, but it's coming from extreme trans rights activists. You know, so, I mean, and they would say they're part of that community.
Yeah.
So,
and also what some people would describe as distressing is if someone's saying that sex is binary, for some people, they consider that genuinely to be a hate crime.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stats on hate speech are people saying just things like that, which are not hateful in any way at all.
Yeah.
They're just being interpreted as hateful. I mean, that's why all of these stats are very difficult to quantify and trust.
Going along with compelled speech is considered hate by some people.
Very, very strange. Anyway, we're going on to the Times now, and former President Barack Obama, who's now weighing in on cancel culture. Not for the first time, Nick. He's done this before.
He has. Barack Obama attacks Democrat cancel culture, and he told the podcast, sometimes people just want to not feel as if they're walking on eggshells and so on. And he's talked about buzzkill Democrats, quite late to the party on that one. But yes, it's an attempt to guide the party away, the Democrat Party, from the leftism that's going to destroy them when it comes to the midterms and in general. And Hillary Clinton did the same the other day. She was saying Americans don't want open borders. And the irony here, of course, is that Obama is partly responsible for the move left of the Democrat Party, but he's saying, whoa, guys, not that far. Everyone hates us now. We need to stop this cancel culture thing, or we won't get elected.
Well, the last time he did this, I remember he did a little speech about woke, and he specifically used the word woke, and he was saying, he was making the point that humanity is messy, and people are fallible and make mistakes, and that if you just destroy someone's life because of one thing that they've said wrong, that's actually not a very humane way to behave. And he got absolutely brutalised for that.
And he's doing the same thing here, and respect to him.
But he's right.
But he's totally right. Absolutely. And people make mistakes. No one is perfect. We're all going to say stupid things throughout our life. And you can then reassess and change and grow and all of the other stuff. But of course, the far left and what is known as the woke movement doesn't allow for that in any way.
Well, that's also why they attack their own with such ferocity.
Well, of course, and that's where the people... You can't hide from it. You can never be pure enough. That's the whole purity spiral. But good for him calling it out. But he's probably going to get a load of grief about it now.
But it's also good, I think, when people on the left do make that stance, because it's getting rarer.
Oh, absolutely. And it is a danger to the left, and he recognises that.
Yeah.
And we're sort of fortunate enough a little bit in the UK is that there's a bit more it's so much more dogmatically polarised. Of like they see like people who are sort of gender critical in America. You are far right, and that's it. Whereas here, there's a much more mishmash, and it's actually coming much more from a left movement.
Wouldn't it be great to see Keir Starmer stand up and...
Well, that would be...
Cancel culture's gone too far.
Yeah.
Sticking with the Times now, vaccines making headlines again, not for COVID, but for cancer.
Well, expect cancer vaccine by 2030, says COVID pioneers. Now, these are the people who sort of worked and created the Pfizer vaccine using mRNA technology. I'm sure Nick knows a little bit more about this. Now, there are side effects here that, people have different ideas about. There's also a lot of conspiracy theories in terms of people thinking this is a way of controlling people or whatever. And I think some people some anti-vax people would see this as like the next step, and it was all planned, and now it's to get people to take this thing to stop cancer or whatever it is. I think that this is a positive thing, curing cancer. But of
I don't
course,
think that's a controversial thing to say.
Yeah, but some people might see this as like some sort of horse.
Nick, do you think that, I mean, the messaging of this story, cancer cured by 2030, it's difficult to see that as anything other than positive.
Yes, I'm definitely pro that. Yes, what Josh
You're pro curing cancer.
I am. What Josh is pointing out is that people will have reservations about the mRNA technology because of the vaccine harms that were covered up and all the things we know about. Well, I don't know if I can say that. That's satirical content. But it was because some people think that some people weren't totally straightforward about some of the side effects of the mRNA. And it's not really a vaccine which bother people as well. It's a new technology. Now, with cancer, perhaps you're willing to take the risk because, of course, it's cancer.
Yeah.
And so you say, OK, I'll try that. Whereas, of course, with COVID, it was given to people who didn't need it, children. It's been pushed on children. They didn't need it. So, of course, people got very suspicious and they weren't honest about the flaws of the technology. But if it works, great.
Well, I mean, it's sounding very, very positive, but you often get these articles, don't you, saying, "Oh, we're going to cure cancer by this day," and of course, it never feels like it's forthcoming. It's always a long way away.
Well, guys, 8 years' time, let's meet here in the studio.
Yeah.
Let's put a date, put it in our diaries. Yeah.
Sounds like fun. Anyway, that's the end of part 2. Coming up, we're going to be talking about Shakespeare and imperialism, why people are turning away from Netflix, and why a fat parrot is making headlines. You don't want to miss that.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle, and I'm joined today by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. This is the third and final part of Headliners today. We're going to start with the Scottish Daily Express with a story about something that happened here on GB News.
Yep, Graham Norton has betrayed me, says Father Ted writer Graham Linehan, as cancel culture row rumbles on. And as you say, Andrew, this was when he was talking to you at the Battle of Ideas. Some sort of weird hall of mirrors kind of inception.
My name's in the article. Do I get a name?
You're named in the article, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's important.
And this is interesting as well, and I'll name check myself as well, because I spoke to Graham on Saturday night after the Battle of Ideas, and I was actually saying to him, it's such a sad thing that this genius writer, who made these seminal comedy works like Father Ted, that was such a huge comedy when we were growing up, it was just massive, and then the IT Crowd and all those other ones, has been forced to fight this culture war, you know, and in a normal world, he would just get to create and write brilliant things, but now he has to prove that women exist every day, which is pathetic, but I'm glad he's doing it. Now, this refers to Graham Norton saying that cancel culture was just accountability.
Yes.
This is related to another GB News story, because he said it in relation to John Cleese. And actually, some people have called him out for this. And Brendan O'Neill wrote an article about it. Mariella Frostrup shared it, because he then brought J.K. Rowling in, and it was sort of fudged that one as well. So, but people are actually pushing back now. When people say, oh, there's consequences, which he also said, there's accountability, what they mean is we want free speech to be further curtailed, because free speech, as we understand it, already has certain restraints. Even the American First Amendment talks about fighting words being an exception. There are exceptions to free speech. This is why Michael Knowles, in his recent book, said, let's call it speech standards. Our conception of free speech already has various caveats. When people like Graham Norton and others, they may not even know they're doing this because they're a bit thick. When they say free speech has consequences, they mean I want to further curtail your freedoms past where they already are with our current understanding of free speech.
Well, I would want to know what he means by accountability. Accountability for what? What has Graham Linehan said that he wants him to be accountable for? What has John Cleese said that he wants him to be accountable for? Because he's not answering that question.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's saying they're not towing the line. They're not towing the narrative that trans women are women or whatever it is.
In other words, they disagree with him?
Yeah, well, essentially, or with what we would know as the... I don't like saying woke movement, but
if he was talking about certain jokes that, say, these comedians had told years ago, and that you need to, you know, you can't tell those jokes anymore, which I think he alluded to, and but Graham Norton's told some pretty offensive
he was
jokes.
taking the mickey out of a Big Brother contestant back in the day, which was quite, you know, no one's perfect. That's the point. I mean,
comedy.
Certainly, and that's sort of Obama's point. But, you know, everything that Nick said is true, and a clever way of saying what I think it really comes down to is just a viciousness of these people and a need to get almost revenge or to punish those who don't think the way they think.
Something that Graham Linehan said to me in that interview is exactly what you were talking about, Nick, that he isn't writing comedy at the moment. He can't. Not just because his mind is now in this other world, which he is obviously rightly feels is very, very important and needs to be addressed, but no one would commission him either.
Right, the Father Ted musical, isn't it?
The musical
to get made.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's shocking. And Graham Norton basically is signalling to the cathedral, or whatever you want to call it. He's got his BBC job. He's signalling to those people, hey, I've got all the correct views. But the interesting thing is there's a little bit more pushback on it, partly because of J.K. Rowling, who kind of exists on the fault line, because she's so obviously not a sort of right-wing or not, you know what I mean? People are starting to say, hang on, what have you said about J.K. Rowling? And he had that bizarre comment that her views were maybe problematic, but he may as well have her on his show because it wouldn't make any difference. But he sort of vaguely condemned her at the same time. It was really sort of pathetic.
But now he's deleted his Twitter account because there was pushback. And, of course, this follows a very predictable pattern. You see, when people criticise him for these points of view, well, I don't know, he hasn't said anything yet, but will the next step be playing the victim?
Well, exactly, or people will play the victim on his behalf.
Well, they've already had hashtag I stand with Graham Norton.
Exactly.
Like, you don't need to stand with him, he's fine.
And this is the difference here, is this isn't him being cancelled.
Right.
This is people challenging his view, not with rape threats and death threats like J.K. Rowling gets, who he didn't bother to defend in any way or to argue against those things. This is mostly left-wing women fighting for their biological rights.
So I've seen it today on Twitter, people saying, oh, you all go on about cancel culture, how evil cancel culture is, and here you are, you've bombarded Graham Norton with criticism, and he's had to delete his Twitter account, so now he's been cancelled.
He didn't have to do anything.
It's a complete misunderstanding of the issues. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. But we're not dealing with the brightest of people, number one. But to say that isn't a way to actually help move this forward. And I don't know...
What you just said
no, it isn't at all. But at the same time, I'm just dealing with... When you're in the trenches on this stuff, like the bitterness and the vileness
it's horrible.
Of these people. And I was saying to you, I spent like a weekend arguing with a bunch of comics defending Jacob. And just all I was saying was very calmly, they were going on about how she was like this transphobe and disgusting and all this stuff. And I was like, please just give me one quote that she has said that is transphobic. That's it.
Yes.
And then I'm just getting abused. People swearing at me, people sending me messages. No, of course not. And they were like, oh my God, you're sea lion. I'm like, no, I'm not. All I'm saying is there one quote? And they can never do it because, of course, there isn't a transphobic quote that she's come up with. And I'm literally fighting about 10 people at the same time, former friends. It's
Josh,
crazy.
The mistake you're making is arguing with comics. I think Nick and I have given up on that.
Oh, yeah.
Quite a while ago.
Well, I'm still in it, but
most of them have blocked me.
Yeah, me too.
So it's a moot point.
Perfectly happy with that. Anyway, we're moving on now to The Independent with a story about Shakespeare, one of the great imperialists, Josh.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Certainly in New Zealand. So Jacinda Ardern, she backs the school Shakespeare scheme dubbed imperialist by the New Zealand funding body. Now, the New Zealand arts funding body is financed by the taxpayer, but actually the government has no control over where they put that money.
Right.
10% of their budget goes towards this Shakespeare programme that I think 50% of their school students participate in. And Jacinda Ardern herself participated back in the day, and it's a great creative outlet for people kind of recreating these Shakespeare plays in different, whether you're acting, rewriting, and even costume.
Who's calling it imperialist?
Well, the funding board have now basically turned around and said that they're just out of the blue, we're not going to fund this anymore. And one of the reasons is that they're saying it's essentially it's imperialist and a bunch of other stuff that seems
Nick,
totally rude.
Two interesting things. I think you wouldn't expect Jacinda Ardern to take the anti-woke stance. That's one thing. But why is Shakespeare imperialist again?
Two great questions. On the first point, it reminds me of the meme, the worst person you know just made a good point.
Yes.
So Jacinda Ardern has actually said something I agree with, which is Shakespeare shouldn't be cancelled. I mean, it's pretty basic, but at least she said a good thing for once rather than I'm going to lock you all in your homes. I think it's Creative New Zealand that have said it. They said that the Shakespeare Centre seems quite paternalistic and it's part of the canon of imperialism.
What does that mean, though? I really want to get to grips with this because I don't understand what they mean.
I think the idea is, what they mean is it's not native, it's not Maori, essentially is what they're saying.
But he didn't, rape and pillage or...
No, but that's essentially what they mean is the invading
because it's
British...
an English...
Yeah, brought over their playwright instead of,
So I can't read
Maori.
Dostoevsky then? Because
anybody who's not Maori, essentially, would be, according to these people, imperialist.
It just strikes me that in this article, there isn't any attempt to even justify the slur.
No, they don't need to anymore. They just say imperialism, something. I know, when Shakespeare's cancelled, you've really jumped the shark, haven't you? It's absolutely mad.
Well, there's been a few attempts. You know, there's been some universities who are saying, no, let's ditch that element of the curriculum. Oh, it winds me up. Anyway, we're moving on now to The Guardian with a story about en-suites and yoga. This is a prison?
It's actually a prison, yeah. It's not really about yoga. It's en-suites, yoga and pastel shades. Radical women's prison to open in Scotland. Now, it's not for radical women, so Sturgeon won't be in there. It's a radical prison. And this is the Lilius Centre in Glasgow. And it's got, for example, instead of greys, it's got warm pinks and bright citrus shades with plenty of natural light. Each room has a comfortable bed, wardrobe and ensuite shower room. There are also studio flats. It sounds like halls of residence, slightly less violent
Nick,
halls of residence, maybe.
Even prisoners should be able to live in relative comfort.
That's the question.
Do you want an Iron Maiden in there,
That's
or a bed
the
of nails?
It all gets a bit Scandinavian. You have people like Breivik, who killed a load of children, then he gets 3 rooms and a PlayStation.
Okay.
That's where it becomes a bit obscene.
But we're talking about women here, and that's a big difference.
Oh, yeah, but I'm making a point, because it says it here, someone is defending it, saying, I know some people say this is like a hotel. What about students and others that can't afford to live like this? But they're saying it's a ripple effect. You treat people with dignity, and it works out better. That's the argument. I'm merely giving the sides of the argument. One side of the argument is, yes, it's better, it rehabilitates people. The other side is, if people have committed crimes, we shouldn't reward them.
All right, Nick. Sorry, Josh. What I would say, though, is I think the loss of freedom is a punishment enough. I don't think you need to have people living in terrible circumstances, and I think giving them the basics seems fine to me.
Well, also, it's about releasing people back into society.
Right, exactly.
And women, female prisoners, are some of the most vulnerable women in society. Who've been subjected in their past. I think statistically there's like an insane amount of them have been sexually abused themselves. It says here 4 in 5 female prisoners in Scotland have a history of significant head injury.
Yeah.
So this is as well about dealing with them in a humane way and putting them back out. Now, there needs to be any more incentive for men to claim to be women?
Oh, well... That's an interesting angle on that. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, because that's what's going on in Scotland already.
It is.
And so they haven't really said here, they've said it's gender-specific. Now, gender, of course, as we know, is means...
Well, that's a whole other rabbit hole we better not go down right now. The Guardian now, the cost of living crisis put an end to Netflix and chill, has it?
Well, it has for the first part of the year, and now it seems to be stabilising.
Okay.
So UK homes cancel their streaming services to reduce spending. I think a lot of savvy people did it earlier on when they could see what was happening.
Yes.
And then they're suggested that it's stabilised, but it is definitely going down. I mean, it's still increased. I think it's 250,000 people in the last quarter. So on top, but actually it's growing overall because there's a new service, Paramount Plus, which came out, which I've got, which is very good. And people are spending, if you have all of these services, it's £300 annually.
Well, but this is the problem with it. So I'm finding this at the moment as well. It does mount up.
Yeah. Because
the problem is, like The Offer came out, and that's on Paramount Plus, which is a great series. Slow Horses, and that was on Apple Plus. It's like all of a sudden you have to have multiple subscription services to get the programmes.
And within one subscription, you have to have additional things. So even if you get Amazon Prime, then you get Paramount Plus, costs more. So there's all these add-ons. So, I've stopped them because of money. It's called a poverty holiday, I believe. But yes, we've all had to do this at times, and this is one of the first things that will go when times are tight. You can always subscribe to my Substack. It's only £5 a month, and it's good for you. It actually improves your mind.
I would like to say, sorry, just as in my other hat as the television critic for the Jewish Chronicle, I will say that Netflix, who are suffering seemingly most from this, just haven't been putting out...
They haven't. It's been rubbish.
It's not good shows, whereas Apple is really...
You don't have to be a TV critic to say that.
Apple is killing it. Amazon's even doing pretty well.
Netflix starts to feel like the terrestrial TV of streaming services. It's just like, we've got a few things, this is what's on, versus Amazon, where you can get everything.
Nick, can you do this last story quickly? This is about the world's fattest parrot.
Absolutely.
Are we fat-shaming parrots now?
We are. World's fattest parrot banned from Woke Bird of the Year contest. So this was a Capuco, is that it? Capuco? Yeah, which is an owl parrot. And everyone said this parrot is amazing. Even Sir David Attenborough, who I don't like, but everyone said the problem was they wanted to not put this parrot in to give room for other parrots, and people are calling it a woke competition. Therefore, Martin Bradbury, the media person in New Zealand.
Do we have a picture of the parrot? I don't know if we... No, we don't.
They said we want to keep the competition fresh and put other people in the spotlight. So it's a classic equality of outcome over the best parrots.
Is it positive discrimination within the bird community?
Yes.
I feel sorry for this parrot. I've seen a picture of the parrot. Where, I would advise people to go. It's a beautiful beast.
Big fat,
want a parrotocracy.
Big fat, yummy bird.
I mean, yummy. That implies you want to eat it.
Of course.
Well, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not having that kind of thing.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Well, no.
We need a
certainly not.
parrotocracy.
A parrotocracy,
Yeah, I
says
just said
Nick.
it again in case no one heard
So,
it.
come on.
Well, on that note, we've got to end the show. Thank you so much. And thanks to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. And tune in tomorrow when Simon Evans will be hosting. Farewell for now.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV. We're Freesat.